where we are scared to take that step and trust God because we don't think he has already prepared the way for us. And it's relying on God every day through provision of manna from heaven, bread from heaven, so that they know God and have a relationship with him and see his favor and see how he is always faithful. So the last few weeks, I have been posting on TikTok, attempting to do it daily, just my general thoughts about what's going on in terms of my journey with Christ and what things he's revealing to me as I study the Bible, as I watch sermons, as I chat with people. And it's been really great. It's been great to share thoughts and speak about them with people. However, one thing that I have found is that it does not serve, TikTok doesn't serve well for actual conversations, to have back and forths, to get people's perspectives. It doesn't seem like that kind of platform. And it also sucks for more extended thoughts where I want to explore a topic deeper. I think the way that for me my brain works is things sort of just ping off in all different directions, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to cut things short or over prepare to allow myself not to just waffle on for hours, but instead actually have a purpose and a direction with what I was talking about. So hence why I thought that doing the YouTube side of things might be better for that, where we can actually have discussions down in the comment section about what is, I guess, what God is wrestling or what I'm wrestling with God on. And the first topic I'd like to discuss is one of the TikToks that I made that has done the best so far, and that is about the curse of competency. So this idea of the curse of competency came about because I have been struggling and wrestling with walking out my journey with God while trusting in him completely. And what I felt is that if I come to God with small things and things that I know I can do it in my own strength, then I am belittling God in essence and not taking his holiness seriously, if that makes sense. Almost like asking someone to do and help you with something that you can do completely yourself. It just feels lazy and it feels, I don't know, disrespectful. And I think that's something that I've been struggling with. And from the looks of it, a lot of people seem to be struggling with that same thing. So one thing that sort of came from those discussions is that I didn't explain why it's called the curse of competency. So as you can imagine, someone who is more competent and and God is gifted with more levels of competency and more skills and more God-given gifts, they struggle even more to trust God with those gifts and with more things, because majority of things they can do in their own strength, to some extent, obviously. But when you are a bright individual and can do a lot of things and God has gifted you with that, and you still are giving glory to God and knowing that you can't do it without him, but also knowing that he has given you these gifts, then you don't tend to rely on his strength for things and rely on your own, even if you see and identify these as God-given gifts. One of the mindsets that sort of came from the discussions I had with people around this topic is that we are meant to do life with God and not for God. We're meant to build his kingdom with him, not for him. He doesn't need workers, he wants partners. And these partnerships need to have partnership. We need to have communication with him. We know what his plans are because we have the Bible, which teaches us all about them. But what we also need to have is communication with God, and regular communication with God. As you can imagine, you can't really build anything with someone you can't communicate well with. Hence why we have the story of Babel found in Genesis, where when God wanted to stop humans progressing in what they were doing, he didn't smite them down, he confused their language, because people who can't communicate or don't communicate can't build things effectively together. And it's the same, I think, with us and God, that he wants to build with us, but if we don't communicate with him or forget to communicate with him or only come to him when things are too much, then we actually haven't built the foundations of what a relationship is and therefore can't really build anything great with him. So one of the key takeaways from this is that it is the intimacy and relationship with God that needs to be built first before we can build his kingdom. And then he can outwork through us, using the gifts that he has given us to do these things. At the beginning of Genesis, it talks about in the garden the blessing that was given to Adam and Eve. It says, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it and rule over it. And the first thing they're meant to do is be fruitful and multiply. It's the the start of what we're meant to do is be. And I think most importantly, be with God. It is not for us to develop our own wisdom. It is for us to go to God and say, God, teach me. God, show me how to do this. And that is exactly what we end up seeing Solomon doing, and the blessing and the reward that came from that, from him being like, hey, I'm not going to reach out my hand and try and grab off the fruit and go for wisdom in my own way and do things my own way, but I'm going to trust God and ask him for the wisdom to serve people best. And I think that is the key takeaway from this, is that God is the source of wisdom. So we need to seek him first, and seek first his kingdom, because when we seek first his kingdom, and again, it is not just his kingdom that we need to focus on building, it is a relationship with him. There's a few other aspects that come from this, is in the wilderness, on the journey from Egypt to the promised land of Canaan. The Israelites are taken on this journey intentionally by God, and they go the long way to the border of Canaan, because he knew that their hearts were not ready for the promised land. He said that if they fit to the land of Canaan now, they're going to turn back and go back to Egypt because their hearts were not ready. What we see is God go on this long journey and take the long way round, because he doesn't want them to get there before he has time to prepare their hearts. And he will leave them in the wilderness in order to do that. And we actually see that exact thing happen, where they take the longer routes to the promised land, but when they arrive, that generation who was born in slavery was still not ready. Their hearts were not ready to trust God. They didn't trust God over their situation and their circumstance. They saw the giants that were living in that land, and despite the fruitfulness in front of them, decided that that was too big of a journey and too big of a hurdle for them to jump. But these are the same people who had just seen God part the Red Sea, who had just led them by a pillar of fire and a pillar of smoke through the wilderness, and yet still they were not ready to look at the situation and be like, God's got this. Like, what does that say about us as humans in general? Is that it's not about show, because if we know about the things of God, it doesn't make a difference. We need to know God. That's why we have this generation then, the Joshua generation, who grows up in the wilderness, relying on God every day through provision of manna from heaven, bread from heaven, so that they know God and have a relationship with him and see his favor and see how he is always faithful for the long haul. Not just know things of God, but know him themselves. God dwells with them. They have the tabernacle. They spend time with God. God dwells among them. And it is that generation who can then go into the promised land and face the giants and do all these things. And one of my favorite parts of the story is when we see the two spies who Joshua sends into Jericho. He says that Rahab, who is the prostitute whose house they go into, says that the fear of the Lord has been on their hearts. And she says that they have seen that God rescued them from Egypt, and the whole town was fearful of this nation. But they had already been delivered out of Egypt when the first spies came. So God had already done the work that needed to be done, that they just were too scared to step into and trust him with. And I think that is so true of so many of our lives, where we are scared to take that step and trust God because we don't think he has already prepared the way for us. Like, if God is calling us somewhere, it is prepared for us. It is ready for us to be there. We just have to trust him. But we can only trust him if we have a relationship with him. And we can only have a relationship with him if we know about him. And the way we know about him is by reading about his word and building a personal relationship with him. Not just through reading his word, but also through prayer. But not just through prayer, but also by reading his word. It has to be the two. You can have intimacy with God, but not know who God is if you don't read about him in the word. Just to say that again, you can have intimacy with God, but not know God if you don't read about him in his word, because that's where he reveals himself. Like it said, like Jesus says himself, that the Son has come to reveal the Father. But the Son is, like John says at the start of John 1, it says that the Word was made flesh, and that flesh is Jesus. Like, the Word is what reveals God to us, and prayer is how we build our intimacy with him. So it's those twofold things, I think, that allow us to then step forth and step forward into all that God has called us to do. And when we have intimacy with God, we talk to him about all the things that we are doing and aiming to do, and bring our requests to him daily. We seek him like we do daily bread. and have that kind of relationship with him, then we no longer do things without him, because everything we do is with him. And then there is no longer a curse of competency, because everything we do is with God, not for him. So that's, I think, how we overcome that. So one of the things that I would encourage you to do is spend time in the Word daily and spend time in prayer daily. But prayer, I think, is one of those things where it shouldn't be an event in your day. This should be a continuous thing throughout the day. So whenever you go to do something new or think about doing something new, say it's a project at work or a conversation that you're dreading having, pray about it, bring it to the Lord, and then go into it confident that he's with you. But yeah, I think that is enough. I don't know how long I've been rambling on for. But yeah, if you like this kind of thing, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Subscribe for more of this. I don't know how often these are going to be, but we'll aim for as often as possible whenever I feel like there's a topic that is worth talking about in a bit more depth. There's a few more that I have in mind that I'd love to explore a bit more. I think I've touched on in this one, but there's so much in the Bible and so much that God is doing that is just great to hear about and talk about. So please do leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, and I'll speak to you soon.